Hey folks, welcome to another one of our lessons learned episodes. This one I was almost hesitant to do, but so many people have asked, can you do more detail of this Wyoming mule deer hunt that we did with two of our great friends, Beau Baty of Wilderness Ridge Trail Llamas and Lorenzo Sartini of GoHunt.com. So, I almost feel that this is more of me giving a book report or a journalist observation because I'm not a mule deer expert. I've maybe taken 20 mule deer in my life in 40 some years of hunting. And I'd say most of those were just by convenience or opportunity presented itself. I've never made myself a student of mule deer the way I've tried to be more of a student of elk and antelope. So this one, I'm going to give you some of my thoughts, and they may not apply, but if you're a novice mule deer hunter like I think I am, hopefully there'll be some benefit to this. So the very first lesson for me, learn from others. You don't always have to be the expert. And in this case, I'm hunting with two guys who are absolutely crazy about mule deer. Beau spends tons of time in the backcountry, and that's part of his business. In the summertime, he has this business called Wilderness Ridge Trail Llamas, where they bring tourists out into the backcountry of Wyoming, Utah, Idaho, Montana. So he's out on these summer trips taking care of his business of entertaining tourists, but along the way he's seeing deer and elk and whatever else. And it fits with his personal passion of backcountry, high country mule deer. And Lorenzo, even though he's got a different job, he's the president of Go Hunt. Since he was a little tyke, he's been hunting mule deer with his dad, his brothers, his uncles. And he lives in Nevada where there's some amazing mule deer hunting. He's nearby to Utah and Colorado and other places. He's been on a lot of quality mule deer hunts. So for me, like I said, I feel like I'm the student here, and I'm here to learn from others. Like I said, this isn't always possible, but when it is, take advantage of it. Be kind of that fly on the wall. Be the student. Swallow your pride a little bit if you're the old dude like I am, and go there with the idea of how much can I learn here. Be that sponge that absorbs what you're seeing, what these people are talking about. Because those two guys, Lorenzo and Beau, even though they're way younger than I am, they have way more mule deer hunting experience than I do. Just the reality of the situation, and I'm there to learn. And I would say that I could have listed, instead of our normal 5 points here, I could have listed probably 10 points that I learned on this hunt. This for me was one of the most intense learning experience in my last five years of hunting. So, number 2, again, these are going to be mostly positives. Like I said, in some hunts, it's all negatives. Very few hunts is it all positive. Most hunts, you got some good things you did and some bad things you did. For me, I'm identifying and listing the positive things that I saw were helpful. Now, you have to understand that in Wyoming, most of the state is open as general hunts for the residents. So even though we as non-residents are having to draw tags and, regions A through W, I think it is, most residents can come and hunt these as general hunts, just over the counter. And Wyoming residents are serious mule deer hunters. I mean, they get after the mule deer in Wyoming. That was an eye-opener for me. You pull up to the trailhead, and there's horse trailer after horse trailer after horse. Does everybody, to live in Wyoming, do you got to have a dozen horses? Is that the deal? So, for me, when we pulled up there and we saw these horse trailers, I was very thankful that we were, what I'll call it, ready to compete. Now, we ran into many people who were backpacking it, hunting with their camp on their back. But at my age, I'm not going to be able to do that for 10 days. I'm probably not going to be able to do it for 3 or 4 days. And if we shoot 3 deer, because 3 of us had tags, how are we going to get it out of there? And so in this case, and some will say, well, Randy, you know, it costs money to rent llamas or horses. It does. And I understand that. When I was younger, I wouldn't have had the money to maybe rent llamas, or it would have been a big part of my hunting budget. I don't know anything about horses, so I would have had to be ready to compete, I would have had to been in my absolute best physical condition. I would have had to get the mental mindset that this is not going to be easy, but I'm still going to get there, and I'm still going hunting these same deer, you know, 6, 8, 10, 12 miles back in there. But most of the people we saw were on horses. And we saw a lot of other hunters. I'd say we saw 2 groups that were backpacking it. All the other groups were hunting from horseback. So if you want to, I guess, start out on somewhat even footing, make sure either your physical condition or your budget allows you to somehow compete with all those horseback hunters. Because these deer in September are way up high, way back on the fringe of their summer ranges. They haven't started moving yet. They'll start moving in early October for their migrations, but right now, where they're at, you got to either be in really good shape, like a lot of people are. Not me as much, because I drive a desk for a living. Or you find some other way to compete with all these resident hunters, who are great people who love mule deer hunting. So if we weren't ready to compete, I mentally would have been demoralized, I think. It would have caused me to say, all right, let's just hunt from the trailhead here, and we'd go on, 5 to 8 mile hikes every day. But we wouldn't have got back into some place where we could just dig in and really learn it and get after it. So figure out how you're going to compete. If you're going to go on a hunt like this, that is this difficult of terrain, this far back, and you're going to have a ton of horseback hunters that you're competing with. For us, yeah, llamas were the solution. For some other guys we met there, and man, I got to hand it to them. I've got all the respect in the world for them. They were moving place to place every day based on where they could get water, and they were hunting with their camps on their backs. There's other options other than llamas or horses, but mentally be ready to do it, and physically. So this one is all credit to Beau Baty and to some degree Lorenzo, but since Beau's familiar, he has hunted these Wyoming backcountry units before. He understood the seasonal hunting pressure in these areas. So I will say pick your dates with a purpose. In other words, pick your dates with a purpose that matches how you plan to hunt them. So, having hunted these areas and these general units before, what Beau observed is you get a huge flood of hunting activity the opening weekend. So we're going to say right here is kind of the calendar, if this is a timeline. This is opening day. And we were out here about a week later. This is kind of where we were at. Well, Beau explained to me that you get this huge spike of people before opening day because it's such a logistical exercise that you get people going in here 2, 3, maybe even 4 days before season opens. They're setting up their camps, they're scouting, they're in there. And it goes like that, and then it starts tapering off, like something like this. So here was our day one of the hunt. And on our way in there, we were encountering a lot of these people who were heading out. They'd come in, they'd been in there a week between their scouting days and their hunting days, and they were heading out. Well, we already saw, even here at this point and forward, the hunting pressure kind of flattened out to the end of our hunt, which was day 7. Beau wanted to avoid this period. His comment was, don't go there unless you have a buck that you absolutely have a pattern on, you know what he's going to be doing, and you can kill him on opening day. Because the risk you take with that opening day strategy is, even if you have a buck that you've patterned and you know about, there could be enough activity before opening day with people setting up camps, people doing their scouting, walking around doing the things they do, that it could bump that buck. And the pattern you were counting on to kill him on opening day is gone. He's changed his behaviors. So Beau said, let's go in later. Let's let everyone else kind of get it out of their system. And let's go in there, and yeah, we're still going to have some hunting pressure, and the deer are going to be disrupted. Their patterns of what maybe they were doing before season opened or even the first couple days is going to change. But as he said, we can use that to our advantage. We know they're going to go into small pockets in response to all this hunting pressure. And we know that their behaviors of being out, late into the morning or early in the afternoon is gone. We're going to be hunting deer that are in tight little pockets, in places other people are not going into, and we got to be there when the deer are on their feet. And that'll be another lesson that I took from this that I'll discuss later. But pick your days with a purpose, and make sure the days you pick, you've built a hunting strategy around where those days are in the calendar of this season, and the hunting pressure that goes with that. So we picked our days with a purpose, and then I'm going to get into 4, have a plan and stick to it. And I wish I could say this was my plan, but once we got in there, the general plan was mostly Beau's, but the strategy stuff, Lorenzo looked at all this, he's like, okay, these are things we got to do based on my experience of hunting mature mule deer that have had some hunting pressure. So it's kind of a 2-part lesson here. I'm going to say be patient and don't give up. Ignore the other hunters. Let me go into detail of item A. Be patient and don't give up. Beau spends a lot of time back here. Not in this necessarily in this spot, but in these general mountain ranges. He has an idea of what basins hold quality bucks based on the water, the habitat, the feed, the escape cover, stuff like that. So he has a general plan of how we're going to find some of these bucks and we're going to root them out of there. And Lorenzo, he could sit for a month behind glass. It doesn't bother him at all. He'll sit there all day long behind his optics, just glassing. Because he knows that's the strategy to root them out of there. So we have kind of a general plan and a daily strategy of glassing and sticking with it that falls into this be patient and don't give up. Because if you have a good plan and the deer are there, you just got to keep working your plan and don't give up. And you'll see, or if you watched it, you saw that worked for us. So the plan and stick to it is don't give up on your plan. And then the second part of that is don't be distracted by the shiny objects of what the other hunters are doing. So when you're sitting there and you're seeing tons of deer sign, I mean, tracks all over, droppings all over, you can see trails that they've obviously been using. But then you see other hunters doing almost the exact opposite of what we're doing. The novice, Randy, starts asking questions. Why are they doing that? Why are they walking these ridges? Or why did they take that main trail down through this big basin where there could be deer? And maybe those people filled their tags. Maybe they've got just a different strategy that's just as successful. I don't know. But we didn't see any of them take a deer that I can think of. But I started asking Beau and Lorenzo, you know, as the novice here, I'm seeing that we're doing something different than they're doing. And both of them, in their own way, I'm going to paraphrase here, said, well, have you seen them killing any deer? Have you seen any big bucks on their back? No, not really. And so one day, I see all these horseback hunters over in other basins, on other ridges. We go back to camp that night, and I'm talking to Beau and Lorenzo, and I'm telling them, you know, hey guys, I'm the knucklehead here. I'm the guy who doesn't know a lot, so I got to ask a lot of questions. Bear with me. Don't get frustrated with me. This is like a learning experience for Randy, the novice mule deer hunter. And so I'm asking enough questions, and finally Beau looks at me and he says, Randy, I've heard you say this dozens of times. You always say, don't leave elk to find elk. Well, yeah, if you know elk are there, don't waste your time going to find another group. Find a way to kill the ones that you know are there. And he said, you know, you don't leave mature mule deer bucks to find mature mule deer bucks. All right, bit of my own throwing it right back in my lap there, Beau. But his point was, Randy, you're seeing what all these other hunters are doing, and you're asking us a lot of questions because they're doing the opposite of what we're doing. Put yourself in your own, you know, kind of give yourself a bit of your own advice of if we were elk hunting and we were asking you these questions, your answer would probably be, don't leave elk to find elk. Well, point is, ignore these other hunters, stick to your plan, and don't leave these basins where you're seeing all this sign, where you're seeing some younger bucks. Don't leave that because you see someone over there. Kind of like fishing, right? You see some guy reel one in, it's like, oh, wonder what he's doing. Wonder how deep he's fishing. Wonder what he's using for bait. Well, we have a tendency to follow the other person. With the confidence and experience that these other two guys, Beau and Lorenzo, have in taking mature mule deer bucks, they were not distracted by the shiny objects known as other hunters and what those other hunters were doing. So when Beau says, Randy, take some of your own advice, don't leave deer to find deer, he had a good point. Because I don't know how many deer or of what quality deer these other hunters ended up with, but we ended up with 3 bucks out of 3 hunters. And they were 3 really, really good bucks. So have a plan, stick to it, be patient, don't give up, and don't be distracted by what the other people are doing. Especially when you're back there with 2 guys who know what they're doing. The number 5 strategy, be there when the deer are on their feet. Don't be at camp when the deer are out feeding. If you're one of those people in the morning who can't get the mattress off their back, your odds of being a successful public land hunter go way down. And for us, you know, we were hunting with llamas, so we have to get up, take care of the llamas, load the llamas, and we had a pretty good track to get to the glassing spot that we preferred. And on our way there, we went through some pretty good spots and places. So it's not like we got up and just blew through there to get to our glassing knob. We had some country we had to cover, and yeah, we blew through that because we knew, this isn't good stuff. But when we started getting to good places, we had about a half mile where we had to navigate, and there could have been deer anywhere. So We wanted to be right to that spot where it started getting to be good habitat right at daylight. And the reason that is after this big pulse of hunting pressure, pushing these deer into sanctuaries, in the morning, they were only out on their feet, feeding for maybe a half hour. And then they headed to their bedding areas. And in the evening, guess what? They weren't coming out except for that last half hour, last little bit of light in the evening. And you needed to know where they'd bedded that day and be right there, because it's not like they're going to make big treks. These mature bucks know that traveling means risk and danger. Kind of like a bull elk that's in his sanctuary. He knows the more I travel, the greater I expose myself to the risk of hunting pressure. And finally, the day that Lorenzo killed his buck, we just blew right through that stuff that had been slowing us down as we glassed, and it's like, let's get up there, let's get the llamas tied off. So sure enough, I'm over there tying off the llamas. Jonathan, the camera guy, and Lorenzo are working their way up to the glassing position, and by the time I start getting over there, Lorenzo's like hair on fire. There they are, look at them all, look there. Sure enough, we got there to this glassing spot when the deer were still on their feet. And Lorenzo killed a unbelievable buck. And we took 3 deer on this hunt. The other 2 we took in the evening, Beau's buck and my buck. And how did that happen? We saw them, we caught glimpses of them. And for Beau's buck, we saw him go down and bed in this timber, and he and Lorenzo set up on that buck, thinking it would come out that last bit of light. Sure enough, boom, he did. My buck, we'd seen it 2 days before I shot it. And we went and sat on that buck. We saw the timber he went into. He never showed up. All the other bucks came out right at that last half hour, but not him. So the next day, go back there, and I sit there all day in that basin thinking this buck's got to be in there. Don't see him. The third day, we're there. We think that this buck is somewhere in that basin, and another hunter bumps him. And we see him go over into this big avalanche chute. And Beau happened to be up there glassing. Well, the buck comes through where Beau's glassing, and he's waving me like, get over here, get over here. Well, because of the hunting pressure, the buck went and bedded. And we were able to take that buck right at that last little bit of light. So the point of this is, when you're hunting these highly pressured mature mule deer bucks, what I observed is you want to make sure you are out there when the bucks are on their feet, because they're so hard to pick up when they're bedded in that thick timber. You know, we saw that where the trails led to the bedding areas. Well, they're going to probably use those trails where they come out of the bedding areas. So we would set up in glass near these trails where we were seeing all these tracks, all these droppings that went into places that nobody else really wanted to go. And sure enough, deer would come trickling out of there. So anyhow, I wish I could tell you that this was all because I know so much about mule deer hunting. It's not. I was the student here. And if you look at my notepad of my journal entries, that I keep a journal of all my hunts, these are kind of things I have highlighted. These are probably the 5 points I took from it. And I was the lucky beneficiary of point number 1. I got to learn from some others. I got to go there and be a student. I kind of, I don't want to say swallowed my pride. I just accepted my position among these 3 hunters that I'm the least knowledgeable and the least experienced of all 3. So don't be doing a lot of talking, Randy. Be doing a lot of listening. And that's what I tried to do, and thankful for the 2 guys I was with. I ended up tagging my best mule deer buck ever. And in addition to that, had a great camp, great time with 2 amazing guys. but I also took a lot of knowledge, a lot of lessons learned from this hunt. So hopefully some of that helps you. Thanks for watching.